a rare sign of unity in a fractured world. Leaders from China, the United States and Europe say they'll work together to manage the risks posed by artificial intelligence. The so-called Bletchley Declaration is the main outcome of the world's first ever AI safety conference taking place in London.
It was a summit with a single overarching goal: to agree on a way to manage an industry that is developing at breakneck speed. In the end, a breakthrough of a kind. A commitment to work together. For leaders, the biggest challenge: protecting society from AI's dangers while not damaging innovation.
We need artificial intelligence, otherwise we will lose our competitiveness. And this is why I appreciate a risk-based approach on regulation. We should regulate the necessary points. We need AI and we need trustworthy AI from Europe.
The companies have the obligation to prove that their technique is safe and there's not misuse in it. We could have institutions or agencies or political decisions. So 3 possibilities. The normal, maybe coming from the analog world, European way is having agencies and controlling other companies. This we have in the field of energy or environmental or health issues. So we can think about doing the same, using the same method. We can also think of leaving it to the companies and have to prove it to governmental regulators.
Meanwhile, UK representatives stressed the importance of coming together.
We have laid the foundations for addressing one of the greatest challenges of our generation, the emerging risks of frontier AI. Despite our varying perspectives, we have managed to reach a level of agreement that would not have been realised without convening today.
Adding star power to the event, tech billionaire Elon Musk is among industry insiders advocating for international collaboration.
There's a lot of concern among people in the AI field that the government will sort of jump the gun on rules before knowing what to do. And I think that's unlikely to happen. I think what we're really aiming for here is to establish a framework for insight so that there's at least a third-party referee, an independent referee, that can observe what leading AI companies are doing.
Even China and the US, often at odds, have agreed. When it comes to AI, together is better than going it alone.
Civil society and the private sector.
Our correspondent Birgit Maas is at Bletchley Park, where she's been talking to Yoshua Bengio. Considered one of the godfathers of AI, he has previously described the emotions of being a pioneer in the industry to what the scientists who developed the atomic bomb must have felt. She asked him what he feared about the possible direction AI could take in the coming years.
Well, it's really a historic moment where governments are taking the risks of AI, and I mean the really large systems that only a few companies currently build, taking those risks seriously and thinking about what governments should do about that. This is something that didn't get a lot of recognition until recently, the safety problems and what we need to do scientifically and what companies need to do to demonstrate that their system are going to be safe for the public.
What is your personal biggest fear, though, that the new technology could do to us?
Well, I think in the coming years, what we have to really worry about is how these powerful systems, especially the coming generations, could be misused by bad actors, terrorists, criminals, and could destabilize our democracies, could be used for fraud, could be used to create more easily than before chemical weapons, biological weapons. This sort of thing is fairly serious, and we need to quickly act, because maybe the next generation that's coming in 24 could already be dangerous. We have to make sure that these systems are secured and that it's not going to be easy for bad actors to take advantage of them.
Is there a particular scenario, an example that you could give us that you would think is particularly worrying?
Well, cybersecurity is a good example. There's been a steady progress of the AI system in their ability to program, like human programmers, And right now, already a large fraction of the code on GitHub is generated by AI systems. But it's very likely that the next generations will be even more powerful. We've seen in other settings that the successive versions of AI systems have been gradually getting better at different tasks, like passing bar exams and things like that. And so if this happens for programming, and these systems end up stronger than our best programmers in terms of cybersecurity, this could be an issue. We're not prepared for these kinds of attacks. But even with the current systems, they can help, bad actors who are not the experts to do more easily a job that experts could do, and that's already an issue.
When did you become particularly concerned? Was there a particular moment where you thought, hang on, this is really, really dangerous?
Well, it's really the arrival of ChatGPT that has forced me into thinking that what I thought in terms of AI capability would come maybe in decades or centuries actually may come a lot sooner, and that the consequences if either this is misused or we lose control of these systems, in other words, they don't behave according to our instructions. These are possibilities that scientists have been talking about before, but I think now we are at the kind of cusp where this could happen pretty soon, and we need to start preparing. Governments need to start preparing for this, trying to minimize those risks.
And are governments doing enough? I mean, a declaration and acknowledging the risk is one thing, but actually what's really needed?
Yes, what's really needed is actually pretty straightforward to express. What we want to make sure is that the AI systems we build are safe. And so the companies that are building those systems should have to demonstrate to regulators and civil society that their systems are safe, so that scientists can check the logic of their arguments and the soundness of the evidence that they bring, and only if those systems are safe according to the different aspects that governments care about, should those systems be actually built and deployed.
But we are actually a long way away from that. For example, Germany doesn't even have a regulator for artificial intelligence.
Yeah, that's right. That's why we need the discussions like we're having here, and we need this to be international, because AI knows no border. And so if a system is made available that is very powerful and could be modified for malicious purposes, in country X, another country could be suffering the use of that. So I think we need to make the view of the companies is going to be better if there's as much harmonization as possible between the different jurisdictions. So it's great to see the attention that so many governments here at Bletchley Park are giving to this problem and working together to find solutions.
Could they be washing their hands, though, and talking about international regulation and then forgetting to do something on a national level?
I hope not. In general, things like treaties and international agreements take a lot more time even than national regulation. So the two things have to happen in parallel. We need agile regulation in each jurisdiction. Agile because the technology is moving fast. We don't fully understand what can go wrong. We already have some, lots of directions and scenarios, and because the regulator may have to adapt. So if it takes years, like new legislation, to adapt, this is bad. And we can't wait for formal treaties either. We should work on these things, but what we can do that's fast is we can have governments talking to each other, so they try to at least align their views on what to do.
And is your impression that the politicians here are actually listening? We spoke to the German minister here, and his focus is very much on the regulation needs to be international, and we don't need really any additional national regulation.
We do need national regulation, because who's going to be enforcing these things? It's the local regulators, right? So we need both. The purpose of the international agreements is to coordinate different national regulations.
he was very much focusing on the competitiveness, and obviously European countries in particular, they don't have a ton of artificial intelligence firms, they don't have a ton of technology firms that are leading in the world, so they want to make sure that they're not being left behind with this new technology.
Absolutely. We need to make sure that Europe is able to build its AI muscle, but actually the kind of systems that are dangerous, say from a misuse point of view, are very, very large and currently only in the hands of a few American companies. Most of the burden, for example, according to what's being proposed with the frontier system in the AI, the EU AI Act, is really going to put a burden on these big companies and not on the smaller guys that are building applications based on AI.
So do you see the EU AI Act as sufficient, or do individual companies also have to build their own regulators on top of that?
Well, individual companies...
Countries.
Oh, individual countries... Well, I mean, the EU is a special case, but in general, it's going to be individual countries. I think in the case of Europe, it's going to be the EU. You're asking me if like Germany needs a special thing. Well, I'm not a legal expert. I can't really answer that question.
But in general, you're thinking the more regulation on different levels that can act also quite specifically, the better.
Well, what we need is a kind of accountability and transparency. So whether it's ethical issues, discrimination, privacy, or its misuse problems I've been talking about, the solution is essentially the same. We need companies to disclose to the regulator the details of what they're doing in order to avoid these problems, and the regulator should be able to say okay or not okay. Go back to the drawing board, just like we're doing with drugs and building planes or trains or cars. We need to have the same level of scrutiny for AI, which is transforming the world and can be both extremely useful, and we want that, but also dangerous if we don't take care.
The brain power and also the money is very much with the big technology firms. Is that something that worries you?
Yes, it does, because this is going to be very powerful technology, and it's very important that the public has some control over it. That the public, for example, has enough understanding of the technology to be able to regulate it properly. So we need that kind of expertise in governments and also in civil society to be able to make sense of whatever companies are going to try to demonstrate that their systems are okay. And eventually we also may want to consider that this power is something that government needs to build up in order to defend, for example, from a national security point of view. These national security issues are not something that companies are going to be doing. It's going to be something that governments need to take ownership of.
The countries have agreed to meet again in 6 months' time. Is that early enough? I mean, the development is so rapid.
Well, it's faster than most other like international congregations. And it takes time to prepare these events. So I think 6 months is a good mark.
Just the last question. Is there any scenario in particular that keeps you up at night where you're really worried about?
Well, I think our democracies are much more fragile than we want to admit it. Human psychology, we're easily influenceable. And it's very hard to predict how these tools, which can now master language, could be used to influence people much more than what already exists. And that, if we don't preserve democracy, then we will not be able to deal with the other threats that may come in the future, like loss of control.
Professor Bengio, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks.